were you communicating any of this or like having these conversations with Mustafa the poet? Like, how are you still working with Mustafa?
Mustafa and I are like family. Friends forever. Like when I met Mustafa, like I said, he was I think 11 or 12 years old. I went to do a venue scout for Manifesto. It was like a movie theater.
Yeah.
And I just happened to sit there while in the intermission while Mustafa did a poem. And I was blown away. I was like, who is this kid? I need him on my festival. So I went up to his manager, which is his sister at the time. And I was like, I would love to book Mustafa. Everything he said, I love what he's sharing. And this needs to be on like the main stage at Manifesto. And we just developed a really good relationship. I can't remember the exact facts on it. And please, if I say it wrong, Mustafa and your fam, don't get mad at me. But I think I was like, how much is it? And she's like, $75. And I was like, no, I'll pay you like $150. And she's like, no, our rate's $75. And I just thought it was so beautiful. Like, and then I found out it was his sister. And and then we just developed a relationship. And then through booking him for Manifesto, me and him started to vibe and just, I love his spirit. I love his message, everything he was sharing. And then I just ended up kind of taking on the role of being his manager. And then that grew. We did some amazing things together, put out his first poetry album. He performed all over the like stadiums with We Day and all that sort of stuff. Then as he kind of grew, my expertise wasn't studio, right? And so we got connected to Frank Dukes and Doc McKinney, and he started to kind of like go into that musical journey. And at that point, I was like, do your thing. I'll circle back when the album's ready.
Yeah.
Right. And he was probably now like 18, 19 at this time when he took time to finish that album. But then what was so beautiful, and that's what I love about relationships. Like for me, if it's not our time to be working together, I don't have contracts with nobody.
Yeah.
I literally don't have contracts with nobody.
That's an important thing to talk about because a lot of people...
And I'm not saying you shouldn't.
Exactly.
With some new relationships, definitely I'd have a contract.
For sure.
But with Marshall, there's no contract. With Mustafa, I didn't really have a contract. I had a contract with him in Dream Machine, but I helped him get out of that. And it like full circle moment, I ended up landing in LA when he was doing his listening party. And Mustafa was doing his listening party for his first album, When Smoke Rises. And it was at Dukes' house.
Uh-huh.
And I go there and I'm listening to it. And afterwards, he was like, we were just kind of debriefing on the experience. And, that album is so personal to him.
Yeah.
And he didn't really plan on touring it. He wasn't planning on doing any shows.
Yeah.
He was like, but after that experience and kind of speaking about the work with his small community, there's maybe 30 people in the room. He was like, I think maybe we could do an LA show, right? But he wasn't sure about it. And then it was Juneteenth, and we went out to like Lamar Park, and we bumped into the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, and we ended up at this private birthday party at Goya Studios.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in Goya Studios, and Mustafa was like, yo, I could probably do a show here, right? And I was like, okay, cool. And then we just started talking about it. And then we got support to actually do his show, his LA show in Goya Studios.
Yeah.
And we produced that together, and me and him started to kind of collaborate again on just producing this show.
Yeah.
And then that show was, were you there?
I was there. I was there with my girl.
Yeah.
It was emotional, man.
That show was
It was incredible. I've never experienced quite anything like that. I still haven't to this day, and I probably never will.
Yeah.
And I remember just the energy in that room was very different and very special. My girl was crying. She threw out that experience.
We had to hand out Kleenex to the whole room, the whole place. After that, we learned that there has to be Kleenex boxes when Mustafa was performing because the way he spoke about what he and his community has gone through is, something that will touch anyone that's in that room,
It's very real. And what I found super fascinating from that was his humor in all that darkness.
Oh, I know.
And I don't want to speak for him, and but it really felt like, there's a lot going on in my life, and I need to talk about it. But I gotta also be able to have some laughs with myself in order to make this feel a little better. I don't know if that was what it was for him.
I can't speak on his.
I don't want to speak to him, but just watching it.
But knowing him, he is literally. I think he should have a stand-up show. Mustafa is the funniest. I have not rolled on the floor and laughed as hard as he makes me. Like,
yeah. I spent some time. A remix project in the studio, just shooting the shit. He is hilarious. Well, that's kind of what I wanted to say. I'm always very careful about talking about other artists when I'm doing these things because I don't want to speak for them. I have a lot of relationships with a lot of these people, but you don't want to make somebody like you don't want to offend somebody because you don't want to speak for them. But I was in this place watching this show. It's very somber and it's very heavy, but at the same time, I'm hearing what feels like stand-up. And I'm like, yo, how are you balancing this? You're making us cry. You're making us laugh.
He knew how to hold space in a way that like trained facilitators, therapists, like community activists, organizers, he was able to hold all of that in just the essence of who he is and his character. And that was Mustafa on that stage. And after that
for
show,
100%.
That was just who he is.
That's who he is.
And I really feel like, there was a little bit of rehearsal for that show, but not really. Like,
of course. You want to just get through the, just
and like
the kinks of it.
There was the nuances of it. There was like his performance may not be like the way that he wanted it or whatever, but it was just so him and so real.
Oh, it was very real.
Like, and the ambiance of it, the way it was lit, the way that we have the trees.
No, I've never seen anything like that.
It was, people sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
You literally have like some of the top artists in the world, top movie actors in the world sitting on the floor with their shoes off. And like, all of that was well crafted to hold space. And he held it in a way that is masterful.
Yeah.
Right. So then after that, there was a little gathering at Duke's house where we debriefed the show and it turned into almost like a talk back, like in theater.
That same day?
Yeah, that's it. Right after that, we all went back.
Okay.
And there was like a debrief, literally like a theater talk back.
I remember that actually. No, I didn't go. No, you told me pull up, but I don't remember why I didn't go. But.
And for some reason, it just turned into like a little space where everyone gathered and he was storytelling and like we were talking about the experience of performing. And then after that, we spoke and he was like, I think I could do a couple more shows.
Right.
Like Toronto, New York for sure, maybe London, maybe Sudan. Right. And then it kind of turned into like, okay, let's explore this. Right. And then we ended up doing New York together, Toronto together. We were supposed to do other shows, but the pandemic kind of ruined it. I think that was around the pandemic time. But, we sold out Massey Hall. Everyone told us don't do Massey Hall. Your first show in Toronto should be like a small venue.
Yeah.
Grow. What are you going to do after Massey Hall? We're like, we're going to do Scotiabank Arena now. But we were like, let's do it. And we sold out that show. We sold out a big church in New York, and like the energy remained in all those shows.
You know what I thought was amazing about that Massey Hall show? I didn't get a chance to go, but I do remember the conversations of Massey Hall. I can't remember with who, but they said you guys were very adamant about not selling alcohol.
Yeah. All the venues. Every venue.
All the venues.
Yeah.
I was incredibly impressed with that. Well, how much conviction you had with that. And that's like some of the best artist team management teams. When they say, this is how we want this presentation to be, and we're not budging on it.
That's that decision-making framework.
Yeah.
Remember I was saying core values lead to your decision-making framework?
Yep.
We all knew we're not able to go into these shows and think about that show with alcohol.
Impossible.
Down to the point where not only did we not have alcohol, we made them replace it with tea and like certain types of smells in the venue and certain types of atmosphere when you come in. Like we were giving out free water at the LA show, like things like that, like take off your shoes. These were all conscious decisions.
Yeah.
We want to create conscious spaces.
How difficult or easy was that to do that with the venues?
Mustafa has a really beautiful reputation.
Yes.
And in Toronto specifically, it wasn't that hard. It was a challenge because obviously that's where they make their money. That's where they make their money, right? Yeah. But if you're not going to get the show then. Do you want this show or not?
Yeah.
And this show is so legendary. And Massey Hall just reopened. I think they had Gordon like the lineup. We were like Neil Young, Mustafa the poet, and like we were just opening it, and it was really important for their narrative. And we know the power of a Mustafa show. Yeah. So we are not going to compromise that power. Whoever wants to partner with Mustafa the poet has to do it on the terms that he's stepping into the room with.
Yeah.
Right. And he's consciously creating that space for everyone.
Yeah.
The stories of that show. I was in Tennessee with one of the artists doing a program like that program. And I got a phone call. I partnered with Jonathan Ramos on that show and got a phone call that the day before they wanted to shut down that show. for
Yeah.
violence reasons.
Yeah.
All this stuff. And
Yeah.
we had to, the hoops that we had to go through, the last minute budget stuff we had to do to put up like metal detectors and all, but we weren't going to compromise. We called up all the partners and we're like, we have to make this show happen. It's important.
Yeah.
And we delivered it.
That's so dope. That's
and
amazing.
then, the
Kudos to you
relationship
guys.
with Mustafa is just like anything to the, like some of the stuff that we've had, I was in Egypt when he did the writing camp there, and we're just, whatever role he asks, we're there. He's fam. He's like my little brother.
How do you identify great artists like that? Or do they identify you?
I think it's a mutual identification, honestly.
Okay.
Like we see each other.
Yeah.
We see each other's energy. We see each other's mission. We see each other's vision. We see each other's character.
Yeah.
The essence of this being.
Yeah.
That's when you pass on, there's all the things that you did, but it's how were you? Who were you? Like, how were you as a being?
Mm-hmm.
That's what people will really remember. How did you make them feel?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
100%.
It's not what you did. People are doing things all day. It's not what you do. Like in this 90 days of silence that I just did, I really realized more and more, there's always going to be people that can do way more than I can do. Right? In whatever I'm endeavoring to do in life.
Mm-hmm.
It's forever you can do things. It's not about what you do. It's how are you when you do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
I used to train volunteers, right? Manifesto, hundreds of volunteers that have to do these volunteer orientations. And one of my things was like, don't promote the problem, right? And because a lot of people, I had to do this because I'd observe volunteers. They're backstage, right? And an artist manager will be like, there's no water in our dressing room, a little bit upset, right? And this volunteer will then go run around and be like, there's no water backstage. Like, and now everyone knows about this little problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Versus, oh, no problem. Got it. Go over here, get the water, drop it off, put it over. How are you when you do it? I was just talking to another volunteer of an organization that I was working with, and he trains his volunteers where, he was like an audio engineer. Right. So he's training all these people to set up the gear.
Yeah.
And it takes like 20 minutes to set up the gear, then wrap it up. He's like, okay, cool. Now we got to do it quick. Do it within 3 minutes. Here's the clock. Boom. Everyone starts frantically running around doing it. And they're like, we did it. 3 minutes. He's like, you didn't get the test. It's not about can you do it in 3 minutes? How do you do it in 3 minutes? You can do the exact same thing, but like in a calm, collected manner. And how are you when you do these things, right? So I think that essence of who we are and watching each other and knowing what our visions are, knowing what our purposes are, I believe relationships start with a level of understanding. Then they move to respect.
Mm-hmm.
Then they move to trust.
Mm-hmm.
Then they move to love, right? So if me and you understand each other, then we will respect each other. Then we'll trust each other. Then we'll love each other. But at the foundation, at this part and at the beginning, it's seeped in unconditional love, right? And I think with all these people, like I love them. You know what I mean? Like we are on a lifelong mission, maybe many lifetimes. If they might not believe that in their belief systems, right? Like in my beliefs, like we've been together before. We're continuing our work.
Yeah, that's impressive, man.